Could it be a tree or a mountain or like a cloud in the sky? If we're kind of getting into it, I have a concept of like different things that have to happen for it to be considered, art in my mind, where, it has to be conceived in your mind, it has to be created in a tangible medium, and then it has to be observed by an audience. And if it hasn't done those three births, I'm not sure. To me specifically, my opinion, then I don't think it's art. Um, so I think the conversation today, when I'm getting into, is just like, what is art? Such a broad question, but um, it's something I've thought about like my entire life with learning about art and considering myself an artist and creating a career and who I am, like a self image as an artist. I have asked many a time, like, what is art? Someone like Salvador Dali puts a lobster on a telephone and calls it art. Um, and where I've come into conflict with other artists is, an artist may look at a mountain and say, I think that mountain is a work of art. And unless you're having a religious conversation about like a larger creator being the artist that creates the mountain, that's a larger like religiosity conversation that I would like to kind of sidestep for this particular conversation I'm having. And I'm trying to find, like, if that is the case, like, what is the checklist that makes something a piece of art, you know? And what I think personally, and I would like to hear what you think in the community, let me know in the comments below. And I think this might be the beginning of a larger conversation about the births of art and not just about what is art. But when I talk about the births of art, it's this concept I have of how I define what art is. And the first thing that happens, I think, with any artist, whether you're a musician or a writer or a filmmaker or a painter, any creative uh, craft, any creative discipline goes through these three beats, these three births. The first one is you conceive of the idea. You may be inspired by it, something, you may be inspired by something, you may be hired by someone, the Sistine Chapel and the Last Supper and so many of these wonderful sculptures were all commissioned pieces. So they weren't conceived by an artist like this wonderful stroke of inspiration. Sometimes they were commissions, but they still have this conception, this moment where they're creating an idea of what the art could be, what the piece of what the work is. And whether you're a writer or whether you're a painter, there is that moment before. And I'll get more into it, but there's a philosophy within this concept of like improvisation where all these births have to happen in real time. But I'll get more into improvisation at the end. But let's stay in the first birth of art where we're conceiving of a work of art. Like, oh, I have the idea, or someone asked me to do this piece of art. I know what I'm going to do, or I know how to do this piece of art. Or maybe the person that hired you, they conceived the idea first and they called you and they say, hey, can you do a painting of blah, 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 blah? And then all of a sudden you have that idea in your brain. And maybe the first birth came from a different mind, but there was still the conception of an idea. Or sometimes you just, in the moment, are divinely inspired to create some kind of work. And that's the first birth of art, the conception of it. Now, the second birth, I think, is also true of every single creative discipline, is realizing the idea into a tangible medium. For a painter, you're painting on a canvas. For a writer, you're writing into your text editor. For a musician, you're playing a guitar, you're singing it out into the world, or you're recording it. Or if you're a filmmaker, you're writing a script, or you're pointing a camera. A photographer is pointing and clicking, or you're going getting your film developed. There's the second birth of art where it's created in the real world into a tangible medium. So now I have my piece of art, But I still think at that point you're not quite there. In a way you are, because you are inadvertently getting us to the third birth of art, which is audience interpretation, people looking at your art and deciding what it is, how they feel about it, looking at the composition, the intention, and pulling their own meaning and their own ideas. And that is the third birth. And once it gets to the third, it's almost another situation like the first birth, where the artist doesn't have 100% control. If the artist probably has almost no control over the third birth. They are one of many, if they're lucky, of people who interpret their art, who place their eyes, their ears, their heart upon their piece of art and interpret it in their own way. And in that third birth, you can be the audience member that's interpreting the art as yourself. You are observing your own art as you play a guitar, as you sing, as you act in front of a camera that you set up. You are, in a way, observing your art. And this idea of the three births of art, where if you just think of art and then you don't create it, it's not art. If you create art but it's not interpreted, it doesn't exist. And I know it's hard to understand. Like, hey, if I paint a picture and nobody sees it, is that painting still art? And I mean, yeah, if you see it, you're an observer. But think of the idea of, like, if a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear? Does the tree make a sound? If you make a painting with a blindfold on, okay, and you can't see it, and before you take the blindfold off, the piece of art is disintegrated and nobody gets to see it, it's not art to me. It hasn't, you can't perceive the art. It hasn't reached the third birth. And it's almost like in that moment we're talking about art like Schrodinger's cat. I'm not going to go into the Schrodinger's cat experiment, but you could go look up the Schrodinger's cat experiment and kind of get a little bit more of what I'm talking about. But I think I'm going to round out the conversation there, where the conversation is about the three births of art. Conceiving of the art, creating the art in the tangible medium, and then the audience's interpretation of the art. And I think those three births is how we define art as human beings. And to me, that's why maybe a mountain is not a piece of art alone. If you take a photo of it, then the photo is, or the painting is, or a song about a mountain. All that is art. But the existence of a mountain, I don't think, maybe doesn't imply a piece of art. It has to be conceived, created, and interpreted. And the last point I would like to get back to is improvisation, where you conceive, realize, and interpret in real time. So even though a jazz guitarist is just creating in the moment in real time, he's still going through all three of those births in order for it to be art. Same thing with comedic improv, acting improv. Any improvisations of any kind are conceiving, creating, interpreting. And yeah, what do you think about that? That's a philosophy I've had. I just kind of wanted to share it, open up a conversation. I'd like to hear what you think about it. Yeah, where am I wrong? Where am I right? Whatever. Thanks so much for being here. If you please like and subscribe. Gabriel Saint. I'm a writer, artist, director, working out of Los Angeles, California. Go check out some of my films. You can search Gabriel Saint on Tubi or Amazon Prime, or just search Google Gabriel Saint director. Some of my films will come up. I will warn you, they are rated R. So beware. I'm also a painter and a musician. You can search Gabriel Saint on Spotify. But if you haven't heard it recently, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're becoming a better person and a better artist every day. Keep that shit up. And part of being an artist is you probably have big feelings, you know, and art is expressing those feelings. And sometimes those feelings come from conflicts in your life, whether it's conflicts with your friends, conflicts with your family, conflicts with your job. Sometimes it's just conflicts you have with yourself. But you have a superpower. You are a superhero as an artist. You have a superpower where you can take negativity and you can transform it into positivity. So I want you to take all that negativity, all that bullshit you get from your life, whether the conflict's coming from school or from your family or from your friends or from yourself. Don't take it out on your community. Don't take it out on your friends. Don't take it out on yourself. Don't take it out on your drywall. Don't take it out on yourself. Don't take it out on yourself. Don't take it out on yourself. Take it out on art. Take all that negative energy. You have this superpower. Take all that bullshit off your shoulders. All of that negativity. And you're going to ball it up into this heavy, dense ball of negativity. And some of it might be positivity too. You know, sometimes life is overwhelming with positive experiences. But I want you to take all those experiences that weigh so heavy on your shoulders and ball them up into this dense ball of emotions. So dense if you dropped it, it would crash through the earth. Heavier than the Thor of Hammer. And I want you to take all those experiences, all that conflict, all that negativity, and you're going to do your superpower. You're going to take it, you're going to spread it into your work. You're going to write a song about it. You're going to make a movie about it. You're going to write a story about it. You're going to use it as inspiration. People are going to be inspired by the way you are able to take these experiences in your life and turn them into something positive. You know, and I'm proud of you for being the person that's able to do that. So, that's it. Take it out on art. See you next time.